Welcome to the Political Fallout Shelter, where we come to you each week from our windowless basement in the Capitol, safe from the politics above us. I'm here with Joe Gould of Defense News. We're here for a special Emergency Friday podcast. Joe, just a few minutes ago, the president had what I thought was going to be a prison reform event, but it turned into a VA nomination event. Acting VA Secretary Robert Wilkie was named the next nominee to take over that department. Bit of a shock to him, bit of a shock to me, bit of a shock to everyone.
Yeah, he seemed to do it right off the cuff. He was introducing cabinet secretaries in the context of this prison reform event and said, you know, he doesn't know it yet, but he's my pick for VA secretary. So,
and you could see
out of nowhere.
Wilkie actually got up, shook his hand, and seemed shocked that the nomination came. I don't know if he was shocked the nomination came today or if the nomination came at all. Look, Wilkie was on the short list of folks that has been vetted for this. He's somebody the administration has already approved, had go through the confirmation process. Just last fall, he was named the Pentagon's top personnel guy. So, in comparison to some of the turmoil we've seen with Secretary Shulkin getting fired, and then after that, White House physician Ronnie Jackson withdrawing from the confirmation process because of allegations of improprieties and unprofessional behavior. Wilkie seems like a pretty safe choice in comparison, somebody who at least will be able to go through the confirmation process. But kind of very, very stunning today.
Yeah, what do we know about him? He was the Personnel and Readiness Undersecretary at the Pentagon, right?
Yeah, and he'd only been in the role for a few months. I mean, he's somebody who worked under George W. Bush administration in a couple of different senior Pentagon-level jobs, worked as a national security advisor, assistant for Bush and for Condoleezza Rice. So
he's an Air Force reservist, used to be a Navy reservist.
And the son of a wounded Army, combat wounded Army officer. So somebody who certainly knows the military, certainly knows this. VA seems to be a new area for him, but at least in the last few months since he's been acting secretary, he's gotten pretty good reviews from members of the Congress. Seem to be getting along. Not seeing the same level of shock initially that we saw with the Ronnie Jackson nomination, where it seemed to come out of nowhere. At least this is someone who's had several statements, seems to be working in the area. But
I want to say I picked Robert Wilkie. So
on this podcast several weeks ago,
I said, isn't he the obvious choice? So he's the obvious pick for somebody who knows very little about veterans issues. So I don't know what that says about him, but
I mean, one thing that it says is that the White House has approached this nomination process separate from the last one. I mean, the last one was a big surprise. It seemed very rushed. At least as a candidate, this seems more in line with a traditional pick almost. Somebody who has a lot of familiarity with government, somebody who, frankly, may be accused of being part of the swamp and part of the problem. Not only did he work at the Pentagon, at the White House, but he was a senior advisor to Tom Tillis for a number of years. So this is somebody who knows D.C. and knows the issues.
Well, maybe that's what you want after you've kind of stumbled on a pick that was, out of left field, is maybe pick somebody who's a little bit more of a conservative pick, a known quantity on Capitol Hill, right? Didn't he work for Tom Tillis, a Republican in North Carolina, on the Senate Armed Services Committee?
Yeah, somebody who's at least knows how to navigate Capitol Hill, and frankly has been for the last few months. He's we've just this week had major veterans legislation passed through the House. It's going to come up in the Senate. He's been talking to lawmakers about that legislation, how it what it does for VA choice, what it does for community care, how that gets through. He's been involved in the mix. He signed a major contract to overhaul electronic medical records this week. All of that would have been the VA headline of the week, if not for getting his secretary in a surprise fashion at the end of the week. So I, at first blush, this doesn't seem like someone who is going to have that difficult of a confirmation process. But, some of these same lingering VA issues are still going to be there. Lots of big questions about privatization, what Trump's goal is, what this means for VA.
I'm picturing a confirmation hearing. Typically, picks are accompanied by a senator from their state. I mean, in this case, we could see Tom Tillis sitting down to talk to senators to vouch for, in the confirmation hearing, to vouch for him. And we know that he actually knows him. He doesn't just come from
Right.
from the senator's state. They work together.
No, absolutely. And you could see Tillis, take the stand with him, introduce him, and then get up and walk to the front with the rest of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and then proceed to question the nominee after that. So, be an interesting setup. So, I know the veterans groups who I've talked to in recent weeks have generally given him positive remarks of the folks that they saw on some of the short list for nominees. He was the least terrifying. He was the one that a lot of folks are saying, at least we got him. We know somebody who understands sort of how Washington traditionally works, has worked with us, has talked to us in the past. And frankly, we've seen some very sincere personal stories from Secretary Wilkie just in the last few weeks. As I said, his father was combat wounded. He grew up on military bases. He talks about those experiences. He's talked about, just getting through military medical system, some of his own family's interactions with the VA. So, as a reservist, he's someone who's not actively using VA yet, but should be more familiar than Secretary Shulkin, who is not a veteran, might be. So
bottom line, a kind of a more predictable pick from a pretty unpredictable administration. Hard to say whether we won't be here on another Friday with some other kind of major revelation.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's, these seem to come unexpected curveballs all the time, but at least as surprises go, this seems like the least surprising surprise we could have gotten on a Friday. So, well, look, that's it for our special Emergency Friday broadcast. We'll be back Monday with our regular episode, so be sure to tune in then. And as this story unfolds, you can follow us all week long at militarytimes.com and at defensenews.com, and also on Twitter. I'm at Leo Shane.
I'm at Reporter Joe.
Thanks for tuning in.